are listening to Art at War, a series about art and war. Every episode, I, Lisa Weeda, explore what art can do in times of conflict. In this episode, I talk to Mariia Ponomarova. Mariia Ponomarova is a Ukrainian film director, producer, and artistic researcher based in Amsterdam. Mariia studied film directing and screenwriting at Karpenko-Karyi Kyiv National University of Theatre, Cinema and Television. She graduated with a master's degree in the Film Artistic Research Program of the Netherlands Film Academy. Her short films were screened during international and national film festivals like Go Short ISFF, Sarajevo Film Festival, Vancouver IFF, and many, many more. She currently works on the documentary Nice Ladies. It's a documentary you're working on, but could you maybe explain the plan for the documentary Nice Ladies before the 24th of February 2022?
Oh, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure, and it's also a great opportunity to rethink a lot of things and verbalize a lot of things and things through with someone that I know like you. And I think for me, Nice Ladies always was a project that came from my passions, from my passion. I don't know. I'm whole of my life. I'm passionate about all kinds of dancing. So that was one of the things. I did ballroom dancing when I was a kid. And then later on, when I realized that I'm a feminist and that there is some kind of strange intersection between the male gaze and dancing, specifically women dancing. And also I realized that for me, all the kind of self-made support structures like communities and groups, they mean a lot because I love the documentary community. And I feel it's a great privilege to be part of the documentary community. And when I've learned about Nice Ladies in 2019, I've learned about them thanks to Hromadske. It's the public television in Ukraine. And I just saw a journalistic clip and I was like saying, no way, no one, it's impossible that no one is not doing a film about them. Probably I'm already like late. And then I figured out that no, actually it's a win-win for both, for them and for me. They want to claim a spotlight because they're aging cheerleaders in east of Ukraine and they deserve that spotlight. And with my documentary, I can help them to get that spotlight, but also to listen to them more. And the intention of the documentary before the invasion was always to see what's going on beyond the cheerleading. Because being a cheerleader in your 50s, 60s, 70s, it's quite different than being a cheerleader. And again, coming from Ukraine, where most of their lives, they lived in Soviet Union, where just like, I don't know, national dancing or I don't know, some kind of very modest and polite and this kind of very reserved type of dancing was approved. And of course, it's a very big Western influence, the cheerleading and its arrival to Ukraine. So it was always this kind of entangled idea of looking into a community of women who claim the spotlight, even though the society deprives them of spotlight because women tend to disappear from social radar after turning 50, and also social security is really shit in Ukraine, let's be frank. So it's not that they can be like, ik ben vriend van Carré, or like I'm going to Rijksmuseum whenever I have spare time, or I can be a volunteer at ITFA because I have so much spare time when I'm on pension, if I'm a pensioner in the Netherlands. But it's very different in Ukraine to be a pensioner.
Yeah, they still, I think, sometimes like my aunt Nina and my aunt Klava from Odessa or Luhansk, they still have jobs. They were still working. Tjotja Klava's, I think, 77, and she still worked at the Opera House doing some administrative job, I believe. So, yeah, there's not really an opportunity to have this typical Dutch pensioner's life where you have 5 reading groups and you cycle every weekend, and it's a really different life.
It's less leisure and it's more of fitting the expectations. You know, that being a primary caretaker and being kind of automatically a caretaker and being someone that things are offloaded to, that you need to make sure that household is running, that you're helping your kids, that you're looking after grandkids if you have any, that you are still working because you cannot really survive just on just from your pension. So, and also at the very same time, you live in this kind of cliche about women has to be pretty. So that was also very interesting because cheerleading is about being pretty as well. So on one way, it's very much playing this card of patriarchy of like actually fitting into the image of a woman and trying to be useful. But also another way, they don't really care if the skirt is too short for their age or whatever. What is the shirt? Where is the border of the shirt for certain age? Is it like, I don't know. Do you hear like a beep? No, too short. Like when after you're 50, or I mean, I was just really puzzled, and I think that one of my colleagues, Ukrainian filmmaker Ivan Salutkin, once during the Maidan Revolution, told me a great phrase that cinema is about paradoxes. That when you feel that there is a paradox and you want to explore it because something is not computing for you, some puzzles are not fitting perfectly, and you want to explore this sort of jigsaw, there is some kind of disruption and you want to dive deeper. Because if everything is very clear and plain, you can just make a poster. Why bother financing film for 3 years and like going through this a lot of, I don't know, hardships and making an audiovisual art piece. So yeah, that was the whole intention. Just circling back and trying to make it more compact. Intention was to make a film about the team that wants to go to European cheerleading championship and to go with them forward to observe how they're preparing for it and then going to the championship. But of course, it was a Trojan horse. We never wanted to make a film about their sports achievements. We were wanting to hear their stories, to figure out what it means for them to be a cheerleader. Where does it transport them when they're cheerleading? What it means for them to overcome these obstacles and to get from the invisibility to visibility through provocation and so on. So there was very big feministic angle in it, which now still remains because it's very hard to undo it. But indeed, the invasion changed the main storyline.
Yeah, and I have another question too, and that's maybe pre-invasion, but maybe an essential and a question that always is there because you're a post-Soviet child. You were talking as a post-Soviet child to Soviet women in a way. Of course, they are now just part of the independent Ukrainian state. But did that also make a difference? I mean, when I'm from the Netherlands, you live in the Netherlands for several years now. But you know that Dutch people can be very direct. And when I talk to my my aunts, my chuchas about history and about what their life was like when they were young, they tend to be very secretive and also asking direct questions is not what they like. Right now it's easier. They talk more to me. Also, I think because I gained their trust. For example, when I was writing my novel, I asked my aunt's, my grandmother's sister Lida, about the Second World War and what it was like afterwards. And I know that they had to go through the neighborhood knocking on doors to ask for food, for example, because they did not have enough in the family, and it was a big family at that time. But they were really, really pissed that I asked questions about this. Also because it's, of course, a sad history, and maybe, you know, the focus on stories in life when you are a creator, you look for dramatic moments and then you try to shape less dramatic moments around them in a way. Yeah. But how was it like for you to, because you were also looking for these personal stories, right? And also because this old Soviet repression was fading away and they were dancing on their own terms, maybe even.
Yeah.
How was it like to have this age gap?
I think I quite quickly embraced that I need to be very frank about where I come from, where I live now, what kind of crew do I bring with me. So it was always very open that initially my crew was always all female, and we were all kind of slightly under 30. And it was kind of us being curious about them. So it was our team and their team. And therefore, my relationship with the coach, Nadia, was also at some point quite challenging because she tried to reestablish the authority. And I said, wait a second, you have your team, you're in charge of that. I'm having my team, I'm in charge of that. So we are not competing who is a decision maker. We are collaborating. We're trying to create a win-win situation where we both need each other and we like each other. But my questions were also, and that's why also circling back to my presence and my perspective as a post-Soviet child and an adult, young adult who lives in Western Europe but comes from Eastern Europe, I sometimes felt that I'm stunning them with certain perspectives. Like at some point when already the invasion was going on and we had a shooting period this summer, I had a couple of days in Riga, I had to go with the male cinematographer. And I knew that there will be certain price for it, that they will try to behave a bit differently with him, not because they would be shy or anything. They were not shy at all. And it's also quite a big bonus that they don't care anymore. They don't try to impress men anymore. They're like not living in the paradigm of being likable and get approval. But this whole very post-Soviet idea that might be familiar to you, Lisa, is that trying to feed the man first. Like, oh, the man has to be fed first, like then we're all okay that he had enough. And I'm like, wow, yeah, no, we're not doing this. Like, and also I was never hiding certain things that I would be like, when in speech, just because they were raised with certain, I don't know, slogans or phrases about, I don't know, certain things that are like not computing with my brain anymore, I would never hide it. And then there would be sweet situations when they would say, yeah, but this is how we used to live all our life, and this is how it is, and we see your point. You probably, yeah, you have a point with what you say, but for us, it's just a part of certain legacy, and we understand that maybe it would have been better if certain things would be different. So it was funny that they understood that I have certain different views and they have different views, but it's not that it's a clash. It's more of that it's, yeah, I have different circumstances and I live in very different environments as well. So it was sweet to acknowledge it. And also I think for me it was important that ethically it's quite clear that I'm not interviewing them for a certain, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't have this goal in mind, right?
No. And also, I think because we don't know yet, we are in the first third of like we have just 1.5 months of editing behind us, so I don't know where it will lead us. But I am having a certain presence in the film. And it's in the beginning when we edited the very early teasers for like pitching events, for presentations, for decision makers, I was upset that during one of the talks with one of the characters, I couldn't cut out my own question because she starts speaking through me. And I was like, damn it, it's not clean. And then actually it was better to keep my voice because it kind of kept the intention there. It in between me asking again and asking, wait, but you first said no, why you're now saying yes? It's kind of this disruption because also I cannot say that Nice Ladies is just kind of the collective of women who are certainly like the same. They're very different. Their age ranges from 52 till 76 now. 52 and 76 are like good, I don't know, could be a daughter of someone, of the one who's 76. So it's also a diversity, and also they have very different life backgrounds. Some of them have a bit more, let's say, pro-feministic views, and the oldest one of them, Valia, who is 76, is the gymnast who was raised as a Soviet gymnast, with this like gazillion slogans in her legacy. And sometimes you just need to let her say them because that's how she knows to present herself. So that's also something we need to acknowledge.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so you were already filming, you were really, really busy with this film, and then all of a sudden everything, well, could I say everything? A lot changed during the making of this film.
A lot.
Please tell in your own words, because this is what the talk is about. I guess it's about how, maybe in your case, of course, I talked to Anastasia Taylor-Lind, who just goes back and forth, traveling from her house in the UK to Donbass area or to Ukraine now as a general, the whole area of the country, taking pictures, doing the project she has already done, taking portraits of people as she did in Maidan. And now she did this with refugees that crossed the Polish border in the beginning of the war. But, she's not of Ukrainian descent, but you are. So on many levels, not only on an artistic level, but also on a personal level, a lot has changed, I guess. And I was wondering how you did that film-wise, what you did, but also how it was on a personal level, but also, again, on an artistic level, because art is personal and the other way around. Many questions, so good luck. I'll interrupt you in another 30 minutes.
Well, then let me completely jump back to your introduction of this podcast. I think when I was listening to you and you were talking about soft skills and about the art in a time of crisis, in a time of turmoil, I immediately thought of the beginning of the invasion, about that week when a lot of things just lost its value. You just start thinking in the very black and white terms, in very rough way. You start cutting off a lot of things in your life as unnecessary.
Yes, I did that
and too. I can imagine that a lot of things will never be the same. And for me, it is a life divider. It is a point of no return. It is something that divides my life into before and after. And I know that this division happened to many people in 2014.
And when the Maidan revolution ended and the war started in Crimea and Donbass.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And but I think for me it was less abrupt back then. It was quite gradual. It took me actually the Maidan revolution started late November 2013. I stopped going to Russian Federation in end of 2015. So it took me actually quite some time to acknowledge, like, wait a second, I'm not going there anymore. And I have family there, and I had friends there, quite some friends. But again, I was quite connected, but it took me time to sever that cord. But this time on 24th of February, it was very, very clear that a lot of things that I kept tolerating will not be tolerated anymore. And on top of that, also, you start questioning your profession. You start questioning this whole sentence that, cameras are stronger than arms, or like some sort of art can convey messages, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, bullshit. You see your colleagues going on the front line. You see, like, my colleague Alisa Kovalenko, who is a documentary filmmaker whose films were screened at ITFA and Sheffield and so on and so forth. And I don't know, Ostap Kostyuk, many Ukrainian actors, Oleg Sentsov, like so many people that you know as filmmakers. And also, again, I can just count endlessly that it's about survival. It's not about really, I mean, it's just so tough that you try to make sure that your close ones are alive, and that's enough. And that was enough for a couple of first weeks. That, of course, you want things to go on professionally, but you think about it later. For example, for me, in my private life, on the very first day of, of invasion, me and my partner, we moved into a new apartment. So we were just having everything in boxes. But I was like, we have a roof. That's amazing. The sky is clear. I mean, no one is bombing us. Amazing. You know, like it was just black and white as that. I really didn't care. It's just making it very, very basic in this pyramid of Maslow. So, and then you don't have anything to complain if you don't need to run to the basement, and that's it. So that's why I think for me, especially also knowing that I'm coming from Kyiv and I grew up there and I lived there till I was 23. My parents were in Kyiv first 2 days and then they fled to west of Ukraine. And for me, I think it also helped a bit to know that they're not in Kyiv, so that they're in, because nothing was clear. It was not, nothing is clear now. It's not that there is like so much clarity, but there is at least less acute pain that is so burning and so bad that you barely cannot sleep, you barely can eat, whatever. But also I need to mention that what really helped me in the first week is that in my past, when I was still living in Ukraine, I was part of the collective called Babylon 13, and it's a collective of documentary makers. And the collective started in late November 2013 because it felt back then that because of the Instagram or TikTok was not there. Instagram was very slow. There were no stories or whatever. YouTube was there, and it felt like the news coverage was not conveying enough what's going on at the Maidan Square. It felt like all the boring stuff that's boring for newsmakers and it's so essential for us, for Ukrainians, that was missing. It was not part of the media landscape. So Babylon 13 was emerging from just different kinds of like crews and groups of people who knew each other via different projects. So it was also very hectic. It was very, I don't know, in Ukraine there is this whole like Cossack tradition of like, we have a saying, two Cossacks, three hetmans. So like, like you would always have a lot of people with opinions and a lot of people who know what to do best.
Really?
So it was all, and yeah, exactly. But I think that the whole kind of hectic nature of it made it work because it was like voluntarily aligning with the principles of Maidan Square. That okay, I'm just saying that I'm grabbing, like we had some kind of common equipment that people brought in and like saying, hey, are you free tonight? We're going to film this and that and we're going to edit it. Yes, okay, I'll be editing. I'll be recording sound. Let's do it this way. Let's release. So it was very like, in the heat of the moment. So after Maidan, this Babylon 13 morphed into an NGO. And so it became an entity. After Maidan, also Babylon kept on existing. And then there were feature films released through Babylon 13 and so on. So by the time of February 25th, Babylon kind of gained its former members or whatever. Like people got together again because it was something that we more or less knew the drill of. It was way stronger in a way of like, okay, now we know how we operate. And by this time there was like already established YouTube channel and so on. So it helped to know, okay, what can I do in the Netherlands? I'm far. I know that my parents are on their way to the spot where they were evacuating. I need to do something because, of course, I went to the protests immediately. But after protests, you're kind of itching horribly. And you're like, you want to scream, you want to cry. You need to put yourself in action because you want the whole world to be in action. You want the whole world to do something. And I have, fight and flight response. So it was my fight response. Yeah. So I was just saying that why I'm bringing up Babylon 13, that for me, it was a big, big relief that I could put myself into action, and I tried to kind of establish the translators chat. So I knew that I'm far away, and in the end, because I luckily quickly realized that I know people who translate much better than I do. So I figured out, and I'm eternally thankful to these people who, in the heat of the moment, were able to translate things quickly in many languages. So we started, there were quick videos by Babylon 13 about the invasion, and we started translating them. So I kind of reshaped myself from the filmmaker to the subs creator and the transcriber and kind of coordinator. So I put my producer's hat on instead of director's hat. And that helped a lot in the first days. But later on, when I figured out that my parents are in a safer spot than in Kyiv, and I was all this time in touch with my characters in Kharkiv, but there was this moment when I figured out that I'm in touch mostly with one of them, with whom I always was in touch because she's a communications officer, let's call her this way, of the team. And because it was very natural communication with her all the time, even before invasion, I knew her situation the best. And when she figured out that they're fleeing Kharkiv and they ended up somewhere else, and they also quickly realized that they cannot remain in Ukraine because she has a 2-year-old grandson, they needed to flee the country. And they didn't know anyone else abroad, or probably not anyone, but not many people abroad who were in touch with them. So when they were fleeing, it became apparent that, okay, I have no clue what's going on with my film now. My characters are in danger. All our plans, because there was a plan for me to arrive in Ukraine on 27th of February.
Oh, nice.
I had my suitcase packed because I knew that I'm moving houses. So I pre-packed my suitcase a week before that. So I never flew with that suitcase, but I lived out of that suitcase because at least my things were not in the boxes. So that helped. And things of a lot of Ukrainians were in suitcases that day. So I felt strange connection. So it helped a lot to at least make sure that I have some connection with at least one of my characters. And later on, when it was around March 8th or March 9th, when it became apparent that, okay, they're fleeing, I called my producer, my Dutch producer, who was involved in the project from the get-go, that, hey, look, I think I'm going to be heading tomorrow to the border. I'm going to figure out, I have no clue how. I don't drive. I don't have a car. I don't have much spare money, but we'll figure it out. And I just knew that at some point, if I'm going to help one of my characters to get to the Netherlands, we'll pick it up from there. And we needed to, be very, very flexible. I don't know if it answers at least part of your questions.
Yeah, I think it does. And did you bring your camera?
That was interesting.
Because how does it feel? It feels quite... I wrote about an uncle that was killed in 2015 in LNR, in the Lugansk People Republic.
So cold.
So cold.
Yeah.
It isn't. Let's say that it isn't an actual republic, and only I think Venezuela recognizes this, and some other weird shadowy states that you don't want to have any holiday ever. But it felt quite. It didn't even feel like history yet. So it was so close to the present that I wondered for a very long time if also because I'm actually really, I always tend to look very open and harsh, but I was actually quite shy about this. And also I maybe humble. I tried to figure out if it was my place to write about him at this moment in time, because the book came out in 2021. But it took me a lot of time to feel strong enough or secure enough to write about him and choose to put him in the book. He was murdered after he was lost for 3 months. He was kidnapped, so nobody could find him anywhere. But it took me a really long time to feel the agency or give myself some agency, because it's somebody else's life I'm writing about, even though it's family. How did you feel about that? That's why I asked the question, did you bring your camera when you went there by car? I remember that you went.
Yeah. I think for me, it kind of makes it a bit easier that I don't film myself. I mean, meaning in that phrase, meaning that I don't hold camera in my hands. I'm pretty fine with writing and editing, but I know that I'm a very sloppy camera woman. I don't film well. I just cannot, like, hold the camera and make precise shots and everything. I can do it in extreme situations, but I knew that in the heat of the moment, I would not be able to. I mean, like, I would come with camera, and there would be like really shitty material on it. So it's just also fair. So I knew it. I'm happy that I was in that point of my career that I could be very frank with myself and with others. Mm-hmm. So I knew that I need to go with someone who would be able to film. So I called a friend with whom I never worked before, but I knew that I want to work with him one day, and that day came much faster than I thought. Because we just, like, in early February, met to discuss a potential fiction project that we could collaborate on, and we had this walk. And then and also he is a quite experienced documentary cinematographer, and he just came back from a project where he filmed also in quite a hardcore conditions, let's put it this way, and not disclose much details. But I knew that he is not shy of hardcore stuff, or like not even hardcore, but something that is more than, I don't know, filming commercials or music videos, or I don't know, things in the cozy heated pavilions or like sets on stages. So I knew that he can bear it, but also I think it was good to go with someone who can be kind of a bit more cold-minded than me, so that I could try to figure out what's going on in life. And inevitably, when we went to the Polish border, I realized that, of course, what am I doing? Like, I was at some point really, really scared that it will be televising someone's drama. That I'm going to, be one of those people who come to the border with their camera, snatch dramatic moments, show, like the queue, or like all these people crossing, drama. But I think it was essential that there were so many things connecting me with these people, that I met daughter and a grandson of my character in Kharkiv in 2020. So they were not, just some people. So it felt like I have certain connection to them. Also, I think for me, it was important to be mindful of what are we filming and how are we filming, and to have it not, into their face, which in the end it was a bit into the face of someone. But I think it was more kind of a common outcry that we need to show how hardcore is this change for these people. And I think because we had this aligned perspective with my character, with Sveta, that if people think that it's so easy to just, pack your bags and leave to another country, it's super rough. So we have nothing to hide about this. And actually the border looked very different, not how it was in many other media outlets. And because they arrived to Helm, and Helm is a train station, so there is no pedestrian crossing, there is no car crossing. It's just quite a, like, I don't know, it's a station that looks like, I don't know, whatever random other station that you could imagine. Just a small station, and trains are arriving time to time. And yes, when there is a bunch of, I don't know, there is a group of people offloading or loading into a train, there is a chaos. But other than that, it's a lot of waiting. And also it struck me that it's a different image. It's not what you expect from the border, and you want even to have this like, ooh, drama, like, oh, there's a lot of these people, they're all cramped, ooh, chaos. No, it wasn't. And that's also what gave me a bit of boost of understanding that I do have agency to show it, because it's less dramatic than you would think if you want to over dramatize it, but it has its pain in it, and this pain is acknowledged by both me and my characters, and it's not an abuse of the situation in sake of drama. It's being faithful. I hope that this is fair.
And it also makes me think of this Babylon 13 movement. It's necessary, and you want to... And that's also why I decided to write about Kolya, because in the Netherlands, nobody... well, some do, but most of the people who actually, if they even know where exactly Ukraine was, didn't know about this situation and about people being kidnapped. And before the invasion, 14,000 people were killed or died in the Donbass area due to the war. I call it a war, so let's do so.
Yes.
So I think it's a way of conveying something that otherwise will get lost.
Yeah, and I think that it's also very important, because it's a very tricky argument. There are a lot of things done in Ukraine now by, let's generalize it this way, foreigners, by people who are coming to snatch sensational items in pretense that world must know, that it's kind of this white savior syndrome that, oh, we come to tell your story because we have all these amazing platforms where these platforms trust us, not you, local, I don't know, whoever you are. So it feels like this kind of, I'm going to keep on having my voice while telling your stories. And here it felt like, okay, I have nothing to hide. I'm Ukrainian myself. My parents fled and became displaced. These people also are displaced. And these people are actually not just some generic randomly picked family out of the crowd. So I have very clear in the end agency as well to tell something that's so painful for me. And it felt at some point in the first weeks that it's kind of a replacement of my own family that I'm taking out to the Netherlands, because I couldn't take my own parents. My father back then was 58. He's turning 59 in a couple of weeks, and he cannot cross the border. So I spoke with my parents. And or at least in the reality of martial law, it was not a choice for me to evacuate my parents. So I spoke to my parents, and they said this kind of iconic phrase: if you cannot evacuate us, evacuate them. So it was this very clear understanding that if you can do at least something, go and do it. So bringing the camera in was also tough choice, but I knew that if they would be really saying, no, this is we cannot do it, we would not film. I mean, I'm not the type of filmmaker who tries to force things into my characters and then sues them into it. No, it's actually for your own sake, it's for your greater good, I know that certain things in the heat of the moment can feel very borderline, but I'm happy that in the end, because it was my colleague who was a cameraman there, it was also important that they could see my face, that my face is not covered by the lens or a camera, that I inevitably ended up inside the frame because I was on the phone with them, because I went to hug them when they arrived. And my character knew that I'm coming often with camera. I barely came without camera ever. So it was something that kind of comes as a package in a way. Me and camera, or some other people who worked with me. And it's also immense trust. I think it's trust and responsibility that you bear, that you will not misuse this trust. and that you will not abuse this closeness that's established. So it's never easy. It's indeed, I think it's good. And I'm happy to hear that a lot of people question themselves and don't do it bluntly, because it comes with the price. You cannot just simply say, "Oh, I'm going to be now a voice of so many other people." No,
Yeah.
I mean, it comes with the price.
And I think this is, we've already been talking for quite some time, but I think I have one. Well, maybe more questions will come out of it. I don't know. But if you talk about Babylon 13, and if you talk about your first weeks during the invasion, that was very straightforward, and I also think short-term producing and in the heat of the moment. That's something I also did in the beginning, try to convey current family situations of family in Ukraine to people in the Netherlands by sharing, in my case, short pieces of writing on Instagram. But at some point I stopped, because I'm, as you, a writer. You're also a director and a producer and an editor, but you're also a writer, and writing takes time. Creating nuanced stories that are maybe made or created or that start in the heat of the moment need time and thinking and nuance to become something else. And I think something else makes it also bigger, or bigger than the sum of its parts. If you look at an artwork, the total is always more. The end of it, the final product. How do you think about that? Because now you went to pick them up from the border, and how do you feel about telling a story right now? I don't know. You know where I want to go, right? It's making documentary films or films. You also made short fiction films. It takes time to get the right feeling, because now the invasion did it add an extra layer to Nice Ladies?
I think it actually made me to put back certain things or acknowledge that there is this massive conflict now in the film, and the whole structure of the film completely changed. And at some point I was really heavily relying on certain knowledge that I accumulated by this time of my career, that I could do a lot of things on a bit of an autopilot and do make certain creative decisions that I did that I'm happy about now. But I know that if not 2 years of development of this project, there would be not enough of solid basis to do a lot of these things in the heat of the moment. Because I think I wanted also to reflect on what you said about your daughters, about your aunts, that you at some point live through so much hardship and so much pain that you start minimizing it. Then you start saying like, whatever, like, of course you try to cope with it. It's just a lot. And you try to do it through humor, and you try to do it, I don't know, like a lot of Ukrainians are living and surviving because of memes, because it's like, again, electricity cuts or blackouts or whatever, like you're trying to go on because the pain is just multiplying. And at some point it's just so heavy that you need to just at least realize that, yes, I'm dealing with a lot. And and indeed, growing up in Ukraine teaches you. Growing up in Ukraine in the 90s teaches you about a lot of things that a lot of my friends in the Netherlands, I'm happy that they never went through this, and it's probably for better. But you have your bar slightly higher if you're ending up in stressful situations, and therefore you're like, okay, fuck it. Let's just move on. And I need to mourn my previous ideas. I need to mourn my nuanced film with a lot of internal conflicts, with a lot of this kind of silent moments, with a lot of this, I don't know, things that needed to be very, very, present now, because there is this very present external conflict, like in dramatic terms. It's an external conflict because when your characters are now as a team disintegrated and in a state of separation, that's something that is very, it's not about what kind of I don't know, dreams and fears they have. It's something very, very out there. So I needed to reshape a lot of concepts. I needed to reshape the structure of the film. But again, what helped a lot is that I had a lot of collaborators on the way that helped me to see it anew and to embrace a lot of things that are coming now to my hands, and that I need to keep on reinventing this longer piece, because we are in the editing phase now, and we hope that the film will be released next year in autumn. And next year in autumn, who knows what will happen, you know? So many things are changing, and you also start questioning yourself, like, is it even important? Are people will be still thinking about these things? Is it valid? And I think because this film originated from very strong other impulses, that I never intended to make a film about invasion, that invasion is now treated as a dramatic obstacle, it lives. Because it lives the kind of the stubbornness of my characters lives. And therefore, yes, they already were going through certain hardships. They were already pushing the limits. They were already trying to reestablish themselves. And now it's one more challenge. You know, it's like the final boss in a computer game now. It's like, okay, a bigger shit that fell on them. And will they be up for this challenge? That's just a different question. And that's why I think it's very helpful not to be alone on this journey. Because I'm editing with the great editor here in the Netherlands. I had an amazing consultant when I needed to rewrite a script to reapply for film funds here. Because again, a lot of things just stop being valid. You write all this like body of text for 2 years. You're creating this like gazillion of trailers and teasers to present the film, and then it's not working anymore. Nothing works. Like none of your synopsises are not up to date, because it's a different film now. But it was good, really, not to be alone, because I think it's very long journey, and that's why I like my profession. That I mean, I know certain filmmakers that work on their own, and maybe that's their choice. But I am a person that likes collaboration, and I like thinking with someone else. I like this ping pong of ideas. I like also distancing myself through someone else with their background. But that's why it's really important to find collaborators who are with you on the same wavelength, but who can bring something else to the project. And that's why it helps a lot to now think about this long-term production instead of short-term production, and see where things are about much deeper tectonic changes, you know, that it's not very on a tactical level, but more on a strategic level. What it tells about my people, what it tells about Ukrainian society, what it tells about us as people who are enduring so much trauma and pain. Because now watching the material, you're seeing, I mean, I've been crying a couple of times already in the editing room, because it synced in with me of how much invisible damage is there because of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. So I hope that it still holds the importance, and that's what kind of helps us to move forward. And indeed, coming back to your phrase about soft skills, I live not through facts. I'm not delusional. I love physics. It's one of my favorite subjects in school. But also next to history and geography, I live through storytelling.
Yes.
I live by connecting and by exercising empathy. And I hope that exercising empathy with someone who is not a generic person under temporary protection, because I still refuse calling my characters refugees, because that's not what they are. But maybe they are. And again, it's another question. But yeah, my best friend now fled, and she lives now in Warsaw. A lot of my colleagues fled, a lot of people fled, and a lot of people came back. Like my mom was here in the Netherlands for a bit, and then she came back. So it's very dynamic situation. But I do believe that if the empathy is created, you at least are like maybe a dime closer to someone else's life.
Yeah. All right. I want to end with a quote that I read last week. It's by Helen Garner. And it resonated with me as a writer. But I think if you just told me that while editing you were crying, but you also told me about the black and white thinking and turning into a quite rough version of yourself. I guess that's what happened to me. If I could keep it on, I'll keep it by myself. Ik hou het bij mezelf. Maar I read this last week and it really resonated. She says, it's about writing about missing someone who died. I'd cried when she died, and I'd grieved for her, and I missed her. But it was when I had to make her die in the book that I lay on the floor and howled.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's what, from the artist perspective, maybe not even for the audience. When of course we are howling because, in my case, because this is quite a dramatic sentence, I know.
Yeah.
In my case, I do the howling in order to bring the empathy to an audience. That sounds really like a very dramatic way of talking about creating work. It just made me think about this. What the last thing you said.
It's beautiful, and I think also now in editing, and I think in editing a book eventually, like editing to make it shorter or make it more, I don't know, concise and so on. I think it's because you put a lot of things on the surface. We live life and there are so many things that are happening, and they're all happening and they're all events, but when they become in a dramatic sequence, it really hits you somewhere else. Yeah. When you see also through the sort of camera X-ray, but editing assembly of things, then you also put things in front of yourself. So by the kind of, maybe in the bigger words, and by the act of creating something, you also choose what not to look at some point, because you're shutting down the outside world. That's why I love going to cinema. And that's why it was very hard to live through COVID times, because I couldn't sit in darkness, I sit in the darkness and I look into the surface where things are projected on. And then you are focusing and transporting yourself to some other world where things are now put together. And I think that indeed howling, because you put it there, also I think it hits harder because you are focused in a way. You are really seeing things or reading things, and they're there, so present, because at the same time we live in like there are multiple things happening at the same time. While in film you're sort of forced to yourself and your viewers to look at one thing at a time, unless you use a multi-screen. But yeah, that's again me trying to laugh it out, right? So yeah, I really love how you brought it up. It's true, but indeed I think it's again thanks to Hitchcock, an idea of catharsis, of living through something, and then being a little relieved because you could cry through it, or you could, realize it. You could make it part of your life, or finally see it. It means that you live in a less fog, maybe, or you make it yours in a way. So I think that's what kind of also makes me laugh and cry at the same time in the editing room, because you can see how much irony is there in life, and it's not laughing about something, it's laughing with someone. So I also appreciate that people who are having the power of creation, or who are having that position in power dynamic when they are in charge, because our characters are not really in charge of how things will be put, that you are with your characters and not making it on something. So it's not a film on nice ladies, it's a film with nice ladies, and I hope that will stay like that.
I think this is the great ending. You made it. I could have just disappeared from the conversation and it would still be rounded up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
You have been listening to Art at War, a series for Studium Generale ArtEZ, hosted by me, Lisa Weeda, and produced by Dennis Gaans. Please share the series with your artist friends, maybe your army friends, and talk about it over a beer. Thank you.